Welcome, and today I have the absolute pleasure of speaking with one of In Essence's favourite ambassadors and experts, Georgie Collinson. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Maggie.
And Georgie is an expert on all things anxiety, something that is certainly on everyone's mind at the moment. So Georgie, what started your journey into all things naturopathy and then being an anxiety expert?
Well, Maggie, honestly, it's my personal experience with anxiety that drew me into it, just like most people when we find our passion. And so having experienced it myself, it started as a high school student, just being a bit of a perfectionist, wanting the high academic results, caring about a lot about what other people thought, getting approval of people. That was really what was driving it to begin with. And then not that long after high school, when my parents divorced, that was a real rug being pulled from under me kind of moment in my life. And I just felt like all my safety and security was kind of smashed. And the story of how I expected my life to go had just totally been obliterated. It was just not what I wanted. And so I woke up many days after that for a number of years just thinking, things have gone wrong. This isn't how it's meant to be. And as you can imagine, that drove so much anxiety. And so I was very much looking for what are the options that are available to manage this and find those solutions for myself. And so I came across this idea that we can look at we can't necessarily control the environment around us, but we can look after ourselves and really nourish our bodies and take care of ourselves. And so that naturally drew me into looking at nutrition and naturopathy and what that had to offer. And I just noticed through my studies that every time we mentioned nervous system, anxiety, stress management, herbs that help, nutrition and supplements that help, my ears would prick, and I was just so excited about that. And so this is where it just naturally evolved from there. And now I love being able to share my knowledge with people and what's worked for me. And it's just one of those things that when it comes to helping someone with anxiety, I always think, I get this person and I know how to help them.
And you've been there, that personal experience.
Exactly.
So your journey with naturopathy then clearly began, and it sounds like something that you were so passionate about. At what point did you turn the corner and go, right, anxiety, that's something I can potentially specialise in?
Well, it's funny how when you look back, all the dots kind of join together. But at the time, I definitely wasn't sure what I was going to kind of work in. I just followed that little bit of passion that was like, oh, this is very exciting to me. But as I looked back, when I sort of came to the end of my study time, which was the 4 years of studying my bachelor, I was thinking, okay, there's, everything that's lit me up here is to do with the nervous system. I love the gut and learning about digestive health, but that's very much linked with mood and anxiety, and we can discuss that more. But these things, as I look back, every time my ears pricked, it was the things that would help us manage stress, the things that would help us to manage anxiety. And so it just naturally was the thing that I loved. And then, of course, when I started working with clients, every time I had someone coming in for anxiety, I was just like, oh, yay, I can help this person and I get this person because I know the journey they've been through.
And again, I'm sure this is something you get asked all the time, but you mentioned stress and anxiety. What's the difference?
Good question, because I think there's a lot of overlap in the words that we use, and sometimes that is appropriate because stress and anxiety, there is a little bit of a grey overlap there. Generally speaking though, stress is something that can be beneficial for us, especially for short periods, like when we are working to a deadline or we are wanting to perform our best. That little bit of stress helps us to really be more alert and clear with our thinking and get the best out of ourselves. However, when we're under that state for a prolonged period, that starts to cause issues, and that's where we can start to really burn ourselves out and feel exhausted.
Okay.
Now, stress doesn't present the same way as anxiety. Stress can sort of be more of just feeling more tense in your body, more aware of the things to do, and kind of like you're just under pressure. Whereas anxiety is a little bit more extreme when it comes to that sort of experience. So you might feel your heart beating quite quickly. You might feel that your palms are sweaty. and it might be actually impacting your sleep. So you might notice you're going to sleep, and just thinking constantly about like what you've got to do tomorrow, not being able to switch off very easily. And then waking up early as well is the classic, where you wake up with that jolt of anxiety. And so there's overlap, but it's almost like anxiety you can think of as more of the extreme version of a stressful experience in your body. The way that the body interprets it is still stress above the board. So it's just all increased levels of cortisol, adrenaline in the body, but the feeling and the symptoms you get are more extreme with anxiety.
Thank you. I really feel that that's something that we just needed to define a little bit. It's great to know that there are those differences even with that crossover.
Yeah.
Now, Georgie, I keep hearing you mention the term high functioning anxiety. What does this term mean, and I guess what are the symptoms we could look out for?
Yeah, so this is an important one because there's a very much a sort of sense that when we use the word anxiety, we're talking about anxiety disorder and something that is quite serious and, you know, may require the help of a professional, requiring things like medication. And this is certainly something that I would support if required. But high functioning anxiety is actually a little bit more of a mainstream version of anxiety that so many of us experience. It's all over the place, where basically we are functioning. That's the key part. You're not feeling that your entire life is being disrupted by this. You're still able to go to work. You're still able to maintain friendships and a social life. All those things that sort of constitute your regular way of living are not necessarily overly impacted. However, you're still experiencing these symptoms and you still experience anxiety, which is a feeling of possibly, for some people it's different, but chest tightening, that sense of adrenaline in your body, your palms might be sweaty, you are really overthinking, requiring a lot of reassurance from people is a classic one, because it tends to go right for our sense of self-worth and our sense of feeling confident within. And so that inner critic becomes very loud, and we're dealing with this voice that's just saying, you know, you're no good. Why would you even bother? These people are judging you. It's that sort of awareness that other people might be judging me, which then leads into a lot of people pleasing.
Interesting.
Difficulty saying no, which is a big classic one. Having the boundaries, they're just not there, and it's very hard to sort of instill those. So if you don't want to go to an event that someone has asked you to, very difficult to actually say what you really feel because you're afraid of upsetting someone. And then of course there's this sense from the outside that you've got it all together.
Yeah.
You might really be more attentive to how you look and your appearance, and this varies for different people and what our values are. It might be that you're on the ball with your social life, your career, all those boxes are ticked, and from the outside people think, yeah, she's got it together. But inside it's a very different story. And as I said, there's this sort of inner critic battle going on that's quite challenging. However, we're still showing up to work. We're still showing up in the world. And that is high functioning anxiety.
It's really interesting. And I think some of those symptoms and classic call-outs, particularly the people pleasing and that inability to say no, I think that will really resonate with so many people, Georgie.
Yeah, and these are typically our high achievers too. So the pressure on yourself to sort of achieve and live at that high standard is really, it can be a helpful thing on some level, but it really spirals into a zone that's just not helpful. And we end up hurting ourselves. Yeah.
So you mentioned one of the signs could be that, you know, inability to say no to people, or perhaps people pleasing. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, this is actually deeply ingrained in our physiology in terms of survival. And it goes back to, if we imagine when we were living in tribes, those nomadic groups, to be not accepted by the group, to offend people, to be not liked, meant that you could potentially risk being kicked out of the tribe and left out in the wilderness where you don't have other people around to help you. You don't have a sense of safety and support in others in case you get sick or you're injured. And so our brain literally interprets having other people judge us or not like us as, I'm going to die. This is going to really impact my survival. And I think it's so helpful to understand that it's a legitimate thing that's going on in your brain and wiring there that is just quite archaic and outdated. And we can start to sort of learn to tell ourselves that this is okay and we can work around it so that when we do want to say no to something, we know we're not actually going to be kicked out of the group. We're going to survive just fine.
Even talking about it and having that conversation, immediately you notice your shoulders go down and you go, okay, right, hang on a moment.
Yeah, absolutely. It just, we need those reminders though, Maggie, because it's also automatic, and we're not aware of it. So just being aware of it and kind of going, oh, that's why it's so hard to say no, gives you that opportunity to really relax and kind of come back to a sense of groundedness.
Thank you. So Georgie, tell me, with all of this that you're unpacking day to day with clients, what does that look like for yourself now as an anxiety expert?
Right, so I do all of my work virtually, which is amazing in terms of the flexibility and allowing people, they can take their sessions from their bedroom if they want, it's really relaxing and nice to do that. And I focus my work around what's called the anxiety reset method, which is a system that I came up with to really make sure that we're not leaving a single stone unturned when it comes to working on those underlying causes that lead to that anxiety. And so there's this concept of the resilience shield, and there's 9 components to that shield.
Right.
The first one is looking at our nutrition and making sure that we are nourishing our bodies in a certain way that is optimizing our brain function so we can think clearly, make clear decisions, actually sending those nutrients to our brain. That's really important for grounding us and managing anxiety. The other one is hormones. And so as women, our hormones fluctuate right through that cycle. And it's really powerful to understand more about what's going on so that we know, hang on, sometimes this is your hormones. It's not necessarily something that's wrong with you. And we often can work with those hormones and start to reduce the drama of the ups and the downs through that cycle, which is really exciting. That's a huge one. Gut health is the next, which everyone gets excited about because it's such a fascinating area. But there is a connection between the state of our gut and how we feel and how easily we can regulate our stress response and calm our bodies down.
Right. And is it true that our gut is almost a second brain to the body?
Yeah, that's right. And really controlled by those microbes that I know it's really bizarre to think about, but we have all these organisms living inside our gut that are really they're like the puppeteer pulling the strings in so many of our body functions, and including the way that we regulate stress. So that's a fascinating one.
Absolutely.
Then there is physical activity and making sure we're moving our bodies.
Okay.
That's so powerful for managing anxiety. I often say if we could bottle up what you get from exercise in a pill, well, I mean, it would be worth so much. But because it's free to move our bodies, sometimes we don't value it the same way.
That's very true.
But it is incredibly powerful for managing anxiety.
And that could just be incidental exercise?
That can be, but really looking at getting that sort of 30 minutes of elevated heart rate several times a week, sort of ideally 4 or 5 times a week would be really amazing. And this doesn't have to be killing yourself at the gym. That can be something really enjoyable, going on a nice walk in nature, a bit of more of a brisk pace. I love, dancing and yoga and things like that really bring joy into our lives, not necessarily going to our workout to kind of slog it out and really punish ourselves. It's about bringing in more pleasure at the end of the day.
And I guess finding something you like, there's a greater chance you'll do it more frequently.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's actually really key, Maggie, to getting people to be motivated to exercise. I think so many of us, if you're anything like me, I grew up thinking, I don't like sport because I'm being sort of forced to do this thing that I don't want to do. And it took a long time to unlearn that sort of negative association with being forced to exercise and run when I didn't want to. So I think that's
Agreed.
really important. The next one is also prudent use of stimulants, which is a contentious subject
Yes.
for many people. And of course, I'm talking about caffeine and coffee, particularly black tea. A lot of people don't realize still does contain quite a lot of caffeine. And the way that caffeine works in our bodies is it essentially goes right to our adrenal glands and sends out a hit of cortisol and adrenaline, our stress hormones. So when you start your day with a cup of coffee instead of breakfast and you think, okay, I'll go all the way to lunch without eating a meal, you're actually running on, you've got to think, what energy am I actually running on right now? The energy you're running on is stress hormones.
It's not an appropriate fuel.
No, it's like running on empty. And so
Right.
your body's just not functioning at its best. Your brain's not getting all the calming nutrition it needs. Remember, our brain without food and a steady supply of energy starts to go into survival mode, thinking we might be in a famine. And so really making sure we're nourishing ourselves, that kind of goes back to that earlier one I spoke about nutrition, but that's so key. And caffeine on top of that is just an anxiety recipe. So we've really got to look at the caffeine consumption. If someone has anxiety and has never experienced a week or two, at least 2 weeks usually, of no caffeine in your life, just to see how your body responds, I think it's so powerful. Honestly, some people, all I've done is just got them off coffee.
Wow.
And anxiety's gone.
That's such a powerful message.
It's really, really powerful. So caffeine is super important. We also need to think about our alcohol consumption. If anyone's ever felt that, I like to use the term anxiety, which is when you have a hangover.
Yes.
A lot of it comes with anxiety because there is this rebound effect after drinking. Many of us feel relaxed when we drink alcohol. And then the next day, there's almost this rebound effect in our body where we are in the absence of that calming substance. And so we get more anxiety and we're a little bit more fragile. So that's a really important one. The next one is sleep.
Yes.
And so many of us in our busy, busy lives leave sleep to the last.
It's the last priority sometimes, isn't it?
Absolutely. And so it's just so, so important to get on top of our sleep. Alcohol and caffeine will impact our sleep quality too. So sometimes there's things we can do to get better sleep, even if we are restricted in the hours we are able to be resting. Thinking of, busy work schedules, having children and things like that as well. So there's a lot that we can definitely do around sleep.
Absolutely.
And some of those things are just making sure that we are prioritizing it. I mean, that's the big thing at the end of the day. A night of not so great sleep will prime your brain for anxiety. So the next day, after not feeling well rested, your brain is not functioning as well and it's much harder to calm yourself down. And so again, it's really helpful to know this and know that when you've had a bad night's sleep, or if you're going through a period of your life of not sleeping really well, that's not you. It's something that your physiology is doing in response to how you're looking after yourself. And I love that we have the control to do something about that. Now, there's a few more. Connection to nature is really, really important. And you just have to think about how much we all spend time between four white walls, not outside, not really involved with, literally the scent of plants in the air, smelling the trees, like when we walk around the beautiful space here.
Yes.
You actually feel a calming response, and they've measured this scientifically.
Right.
There's literally chemicals in the air that calm us down from being in nature.
Such a good reminder.
Yes, and we know this stuff intuitively, but I love that there's science behind it too, and we can actually see that. And then, of course, meaningful connections is really important. And with anxiety, because we have this inner critic, this fear of judgment, so often we feel like we need to withdraw from people and we don't want to, it's just easier to not have to interact with other people. And so what happens is we tend to isolate ourselves and not reach out and not share what's really going on. And being vulnerable with people that you trust, opening up, is huge for bringing in more of that sense of connection. And when we feel connected, going back to that idea of being part of the tribe, we feel safe and supported, and that's really important for anxiety.
It all works hand in hand.
Yes,
doesn't it?
It really
Okay.
does. And now there's one more.
Yes.
That last one is awareness of your thoughts. So bringing this awareness, just like I've explained, when we know what's going on, oh, my brain has this pattern. This is the way that the mind works. It's always looking for problems. It's always looking for a reason to be stressed. The inner critic, it's always there, but we don't have to necessarily believe what it's telling us. And when we have this awareness and we cultivate that more of the time, it makes it much easier to level out and not react to all of those anxious thoughts.
That's such an important message. So Georgie, tell me, what are some of the things I can do day to day to help me manage that anxiety?
Oh, I love this question. So I think one of the easiest things, Maggie, is to look at what can we easily weave into our day-to-day routine without having to add on tons of time. And all of my clients I work with are really busy, as we all are. And so we have to get creative here. And there are some really nice solutions. So one of the ones I love the most is eating more bitter foods. And this includes things like apple cider vinegar.
Okay.
You can have a little bit before you start your day, so before you start eating, ideally 15 minutes before breakfast, you have a little bit of apple cider vinegar. So the way I describe this, it's not super specific because it actually doesn't matter. If you had a little shot glass and you had a third of that full of apple cider vinegar and 2/3 with water, you always want to dilute it. Don't have it straight. It will upset you.
Good to know. Thank you.
What this is doing is it's actually triggering the first phase of digestion. It's switching your digestion on for the day. You'll notice when you do taste something bitter, your mouth starts to fill with saliva. Just like if I had a wedge of lemon right now and you bit into that wedge of lemon, your mouth would be full of saliva. And this is how we know we've switched on digestion, because that's one of the first components, salivation. And so when we've done this, what we can rest assured feeling is that we've actually moved out of fight or flight mode and into our rest and digest mode.
Okay.
Our nervous system has two states that it can be in at any one time. You're never in both. You can only be in one or the other. Many of us are in fight or flight mode more of the time, which is where we are perceiving a threat. The common description is you might be, back in the day, we might have come across a bear in the woods, and that sends us into fight or flight mode, this protective state where all our blood flow has moved to our limbs so that we can run away or fight something. Now, when we are in that rest and digest mode, we're much more in our restful state. This is not an emergency state. And a lot of us aren't in that state enough of the time. So if we do things like have bitter foods, apple cider vinegar, taking that little shot of apple cider vinegar before breakfast, you're moving your body back into that rest and digest mode throughout your day. And it doesn't take much time to just have a little bit of apple cider vinegar or something bitter. Squeezing some lemon juice on your salad or on your vegetables is another great one. Things like rocket leaves are nice and bitter, those bitter greens. A lot of us are not eating enough of that anyway, and it's really, really powerful for helping to keep us feeling calm. Another way we can do this is lying down on the floor, and I recommend this ideally before bed, but I love this one because you can actually even do it in front of the TV at the end of a busy work day and do it on the couch where you're basically in a position where your legs are elevated, you're lying flat on the floor, and your legs are up against a wall or the back of the couch. And so what's so great about this is all you need to do is put yourself in that position, hold it for about 10, 15 minutes, and your body automatically does the relaxation process for you. You're automatically sending your body into that rest and digest mode, just because, remember I said when we're in fight or flight mode, the blood has moved to your limbs predominantly and away from your digestive system, because that's not so important when we're in an emergency. But when you actually move your body into this legs up the wall position, what you're doing, so your body's in an L shape. What you're doing is you're letting gravity help move the blood flow from your legs down back to your abdomen.
Got it.
And this is powerfully relaxing for our body. And so I love it. When you're too wound up to meditate or do anything else, just get yourself into that position, and it's so calming for you. It's a great one for when you're restless and can't sleep at night as well. You can just flip around to the top of the bed head, and it works so well.
And again, something so quick that we can all start doing, today, that doesn't take a lot of time.
Yes.
But is one of those things we can start as perhaps that ritual or routine.
That's right. You're probably going to unwind at the end of the day watching some TV anyway. And so it's nice to know there's these things that we can do that just weave into our daily routine.
So in terms of complementary therapy, what are some of the things that you like to do personally to, I guess, add to your holistic well-being?
Well, I think that we've really got to remember the importance of magnesium.
Okay.
And that is something that I will take in a myriad of ways, because the thing is, Maggie, so many of us are just not getting enough magnesium.
Right.
It's not in high enough amounts in our soil, which means that even the produce is not getting that magnesium content. So we have to supplement often with magnesium. The other factor is many of us are churning through our magnesium stores. When we are more stressed and anxious, we're using up more magnesium.
So interesting.
I know. And so it's just so important that we're replenishing that magnesium. It helps to calm our nervous system. It's really important for the production of some of those calming chemicals in our brain, like serotonin and another one, GABA, also known as gamma aminobutyric acid.
Right.
Don't worry too much about it, but they just calm our system and help us to feel relaxed. And so magnesium is really important for those. It has a lot of other important properties too, such as helping us to balance and regulate our hormones. And so you can see why this is just an overall important one for so many of us when we are dealing with that chronic tension in our bodies. So magnesium, you can, take it orally as a supplement. You can also have a magnesium bath with Epsom salts, or you can take it as a spray on your body. So there's a few different options, and I like to use a range of them. I'm not too meticulous with it. I don't necessarily do everything every day. But again, I like that you can just sort of see the magnesium spray when it's there, or when I want to have a bath, I'll always put the Epsom salts in it. And, I love adding some essential oils and things in there too that are beautiful and relaxing for the system. That always enhances the effect.
Oh, perfect. And tell me, what are some of your favourite pure essential oils to use at home?
I honestly am really into lavender. I've always loved lavender. I'm from as young as I can remember, I've been having lavender on my pillow and that kind of thing to wind down at the end of the day. It really brings us, not only are there actual calming properties that relax our nervous system, but focusing on the scent and really grounding yourself in just bringing your attention to what you are inhaling is in itself very calming for our bodies. It brings us out of our mind and back into our body. And that's what I love so much about something like lavender. Frankincense is another beautiful one that I think not so many people know about, but is very, very calming for our system too.
Very true. And I think with frankincense, particularly when blended with lavender, just that grounding, that base note with that floral, again, like you mentioned, just takes you on that sort of path to relaxation.
Absolutely. And this is something that we can just, have in our office or our workspace, or put on, you can have a diffuser and put that on at the end of the day as part of your wind down routine. And I love, again, it's so effortless. You don't have to sit there concentrating really hard, trying to meditate or doing this big long ritual, but just 5 to 10 minutes of inhaling those beautiful calming oils is really, really powerful.
Georgie, you mentioned that you enjoy blending 100% pure essential oils at home. Tell me, how do you like to use them outside of diffusion? Do you have any ways that you like to use them at home?
I really love the diffuser, I must say. So first, let's get that one out of the way. But there are some really creative ways you can use those oils. And I love that, because then it's just something that can, be integrated through whatever your lifestyle is. So I really love adding them to the bath, just because then not only are you in that warm cocoon of relaxing bath time, but you're also getting the benefits of the oils and inhaling them. I just think it adds an extra element of luxury to the bath experience too. So that's one of my favorites. I think they're beautiful for massage too. So whether you're gifting a massage to someone you love, or even people often forget about, you can give yourself a foot massage. That's a really nice way to wind down before bed and ground yourself literally by bringing all your focus and your awareness to your feet. So that's a lovely one as well. I like it sprayed on the pillow before bed too, just to inhale those scents while I sleep. And those are probably my favorites. The last one would be, I also really love using pure essential oils as a perfume. So instead of having a fragrance that's full of all kinds of chemicals, you can have something really natural that I always will get complimented on essential oils as my perfume.
I love that you've mentioned that, and I'm exactly the same. Steering away from perhaps that synthetic is such a great way to have not just the benefits, but also that enjoyment throughout the day.
Absolutely. And people really notice.
They really do.